It's the week of January 20th in 2020, and we here at Roll for Crit are here to give you our favorite Kickstarters in our Kickstarter Pickstarters. 25th Century Games has traveled back to the 21st century to bring us Jurassic Parts, a game about collecting parts from an even farther distant century. In this game, you are all paleontologists and you're trying to pick up dinosaur bones. The thing is, like, unfortunately in real life, many of these bones have been scattered and shaken through many different elemental forces. Your goal is to try to gather up these complete skeletons. To do that, you'll be using chisels and placing them on a board. Very similar to something like Catan or Ticket to Ride, you're going to be making paths. But when an entire board has sort of been separated by chisels, you will break that piece of the board off. Then, depending on how many chisels each player donated to that sort of line, that fissure, they'll get a certain number of those dinosaur tiles. These tiles can help you make up skeletons. There's ones that are only one hex, some have two, up to much bigger ones. But there's also plant fossils and amber, which you can use for extra actions. This is another dinosaur digging game, and I will say if you're not a big fan of dinosaurs like me, you probably may be a little tired of them, but I will say the chisel mechanic is a little bit more interesting. It's not the one road in Catan where you can sort of split people off. You are sort of community working together to build that road, but you might want to be the one who donates the most to it, depending on what's in there. Like if you don't need T-Rex parts and there's a lot of T-Rex in there, you're like, I can just donate a few here and there. But if you need that one more skull, you want to be like, I gotta get the most out of that.
And I like the idea of the Earth splitting apart. It's very thematic and cool, and also really affects the actual board and the play of it. I don't think there are too many dinosaur games, to be honest with you.
I feel like usually if there's a Kickstarter with dinosaurs, I mention it.
Well, you find them all, but they're not, they're underground, just like the bones.
Indeed. But many of them are a worthwhile find. And this, for only $29, is at a great price.
Gray Fox Games is publishing a new one called Tortuga 2199. Tortuga like pirates, but in space, so it's kind of like space pirates. You're traveling around a board and you are trying to collect minerals, fight enemies, become stronger than your opponents, and gain control of Tortuga, but it's also primarily a deck building game. So general rules of deck building apply. You're going to have a deck, you're going to be playing cards that will generate currency of different types, but the twist of it is that boards. You're traveling around to different hexes, and there's also an area control aspect to it. So if you have control of a certain place and you're near it, it might give you a bonus, some kind of a power. Maybe you can buy more things or something else, travel faster, but someone else could come and fight you for it. So there's also an element of player-to-player combat, so direct interaction in that regard. Some very interesting things that I thought sounded like cool twists on the deck building aspect, which is a solid groundwork, a solid foundation for everything else. We say this all the time, but it's always nice to see when the deck building game does something like that.
But my first question, when you say Tortuga, do you mean Tortuga on Earth, or is it like a planet called Tortuga?
I believe it's like a space temple.
It's not the
No, it doesn't take place on Earth.
Neo Tortuga.
But I could be wrong. I don't. Maybe the lore is beyond what I saw. So check out the page for yourself to find out. But yeah, it sounded like a good mix of, like I said, again, area control, deck building, and combat even.
Space pirates.
Yeah, space pirates. A lot of interesting things. So if all that sounds of interest to you, you may want to look at Tortuga 2199. It's for $59.
Micro City was initially a solo player print and play game, but now in this physical version, there's a lot more to it. This game is about building a city, now includes not only the solo mode from the original print and play, but a cooperative and competitive mode. The basis of the entire game is you will move around a grid of cards, which you will set up in the beginning, each with different spaces and actions. You'll roll some dice, which will let you do certain actions on cards you play, like a card may only be able to trigger its advanced action if you rolled a 5. So there's some manipulation there. You'll be gathering resources to try to build up this building card, for example, a skyscraper. But you also have to manage other resources such as these cubes that if you put them all on the board or on your skyscraper and you have none left, you actually lose. And there's also a timer too, which you actually will adjust depending on how hard you want your game. Seems like it has a lot of fun ways to make it more difficult or not, depending on what plan you choose and also the difficulty of it. And then the fact now that the solo mode comes with other modes is really fun. The cooperative being very similar, you choose a plan, you're just working together, so you actually roll multiple dice, and you can choose who wants which dice. So it's a bit more of a back and forth management and seeing like, oh, I need the 5. Can I use the 5? Yeah, then I can use the 2 or something like that. When the competitive adds, instead of having the one plan, you have these more mini plans and see who can get the most points in the time limit, while also you have the cards in your hand. Let's say I played the card with this value of 1. Your opponent, which has the same cards, can't use that card on their next turn. They can't use whatever's in the face up in the other player's discard pile. So there's a bit more planning that way. Maybe you play a card that's not optimal for you, but was the plan of your opponent to play on their next turn.
It also sounds like a bit of a blending of elements, maybe card playing and dice rolling and what have you.
Yeah, the dice are definitely minimal. I don't think if you're worried about that randomness, it's not that big of a deal because they really just are like, oh, maybe some advanced actions or move, like the cards you play, you move your piece around the board too for some extra actions. But that's more of just adjacency movement, not move to your dice rolls. And I can't think of many games that start off as solo and then go up. It's usually, here's this game, we made a solo mode on top of it.
Right. This one, it makes sense. You start small and then you work your way out. I suppose it could work that way sometimes.
So for $19, check this game out now. If you're definitely a solo player, you should. But maybe if you can meet up with people who, whether they like cooperative or competitive, this could be a great game for you.
Trophy is a new role-playing game from the Gauntlet gaming community. Think Uncharted, Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider style, finding lost tombs and relics in ancient temples, but with a very dark twist in that the players play as these adventurers who are now being driven mad by their exploits. Essentially, they're finding very disturbing things and places. They've been doing it for so long that it's starting to take a toll on them. And that is who you play as. And there are actually 3 different books in this campaign with 3 different purposes in that setting. The first one is designed for one-shots only, so the idea is that by the end of it, all of your characters will probably either be dead or insane or some terrible thing will befall them. The other book is for ongoing campaigns, so you can use it for a longer series of scenarios. And then there's a third one, which is a more setting agnostic one that gives you kind of the rule set and the template and lets you add in your own ideas for what you think these temples are like. And there's an interesting system at play here. It uses 6-sided dice, and you travel through, I think they call them rings, and that guides you through the story as like these major events or set pieces, I suppose, that characters are put through. But it sounded very original and interesting, and I also like that. I love the one-shot idea. That's something that we enjoyed with 10 Candles, the idea of characters just, you're going to die.
Right.
Whatever it is.
The horror setting seems to work really well in the one-shot.
Yeah. So, but of course, if you want more, you can do that too. Cool stuff.
When you mentioned temples and stuff, but I'm curious, especially obviously the one shot makes sense. But for the longer campaign, would that be including, like, let's say, if I was playing, I went to the temple, then went back to normal life, and that's when I started seeing illusion? Or is it like really focus on their stay in the jungle and temple or desert, wherever they are?
Yeah. I'm sure you could implement something like that.
Right. Well, obviously, the third book is all about just going nuts, but I'm curious if
I don't think that's built in, but I think it's more, maybe it is. They do have some preview pages up there you can look at, but it's more like, here's a series of you go here, and then you're going to go here. They're just going to be like longer, more involved, I think, in the longer version. But I don't see why you couldn't do something like that. Also, take a look at those preview pages because I do think the layout of the book also is very cool and clean and interesting. So for $30, you can get a PDF of all 3 of them. If you want to get a hardcover copy of any of them, that's $40, which includes all the PDFs. If you want all 3 books, I think they have a deal that's $100 for 3 hardcover books. But you can pick and choose what you want from it. It's called Trophy.
We're not done with RPGs just yet. We have from Tab Creations, Age of Ambition. The idea of this RPG is the world is sort of set, it's still fantasy, but it's set almost like the changing of ages, like into the industrial age. We're starting to see a change in government and the people, technology, science rising up compared to magic. There's still magic here though. And you are not on Earth, you're on a moon of a gas giant. And apparently you had some problems with the people from another moon of the gas giant. But the idea is that you're going to be playing as heroes in this sort of world that's about to change, and you're going to be the one sort of spearheading that. So whether that's going to be the inventors or maybe spies or politicians, the kind of people who are also pushing maybe the social change as much as any kind of physical change. An entire world that's built designed to focus in on the social, but it's not just simply you're all like Game of Thrones backstabby. It's that weird transition period, which is I think a lot more interesting because that could have more weird questions. In fact, it's one we're in now if you think about it, like automation of workers and stuff. I don't think they'll have that. They could, with magic sort of throws off where we can expect certain conversations to happen, but
no, that sounds really exciting. I love the idea of being able to kind of, you have a blank slate. It's like now it's up to you guys to decide what's your society going to do, what's it going to be like. I'm trying to think. I guess a lot of storytelling games sort of have that kind of component to it. I remember there was the one game Conspiracy that we played, which was also a role-playing storytelling sort of game that was, I feel like, had a similar kind of element to it. And yeah, I think that sounds cool because you don't get to do that in real life usually. Well, kind of you can try to influence it, but to really be in control of like what happens.
That is an argument for another video. But just like almost every RPG, as we say, there are PDF levels versus book levels. You're really going to start around $20, I believe, for the PDF with $40 for the physical. But of course, check what out and get what you want. And if there's any extra stuff, take a look.
A bonus pick for you, there's a relaunch this week of Vorpal Board, which we covered almost a year ago. I think it was last April when it was originally on Kickstarter. It's this crazy concept of being able to play board games with people in other parts of the world online via your phone or a tablet or a camera, and then actually the physical board space. So you can scan cards into a device and players who aren't there will be able to interact and see the board through a camera and tell you how pieces they want to move. Really ambitious, interesting idea. Apparently it didn't get funded, but they lowered their goal quite a bit and I think simplified some of the pledge levels. I'm still really intrigued by it. It still remains to be seen. Like it's a very weird idea.
Yeah, I actually got to talk to one of the guys back at PAX Unplugged when you were playing Dark Tower, and we actually went off to a whole great conversation about Unmatched, is one of the games they were focusing on for their thing, which made me even hurt more. Like, man, if you were there, you would just, it was the conversation you should have been a part of. But definitely take a look. But also, you made it sound so great, like playing across the world. For me, I'm like, I just want to play with you, but I can be in my underwear.
That's the real benefit. You don't got to put pants on to play with people. So look at that. As well as any of the other ones we mentioned this week, I'm really excited about the RPGs from this week. I think they both sounded awesome. But let us know if you were busy back in any of these other games that are out there.
Of course, let us know in the comments down below. If there's any Kickstarter you felt we did not give enough time to, let us know and we'll bring it up. But until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
This has been Kickstarter, Pickstarter.